Well, we are just about 2 hours away from hearing directly from the Secret Service about the attempted assassination of former President Trump. They're set to speak to the media at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And listen to this. It will be the agency's first news conference in almost 3 weeks. That's inconceivable. An assassination attempt on the former president of the United States. And the first time we get a press conference, 20 days. Wow. They'll have a lot to answer for, including this new video from one of the victims of the shooting, clearly showing a man running on the roof moments before the gunman opened fire. What's going on there? I'm sure they'll be asked that. Comes as a whistleblower claims that the acting Secret Service director, Ronald Rowe, is to blame for the security lapses. Well, hello, everyone. It's Friday. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany, here with my co-host, Emily Campagno. Also joining us, Marie Harf, former State Department spokesperson under President Obama and Fox News contributor. Tammy Bruce as well, Fox News contributor and president of American Spirit Enterprises. And for the very first time, look who it is on the couch, former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. But first, let's go to CB Cotton live in Butler, Pennsylvania. CB.
Hi, Kayleigh. Good afternoon. Republican Senator Josh Hawley says he's learned from a whistleblower who claims gunman Thomas Matthew Crooks could have been stopped, but the Secret Service agents who would have done it were not at the July 13th rally, according to a series of allegations shared by the lawmaker who says he's been told Secret Service Acting Director Ronald Rowe made cuts to the agency's counter-surveillance division, which includes agents responsible for threat assessments. The whistleblower claims none of these specific agents were at the rally, nor was an evaluation of the rally site done before the event. Hawley summarized the allegations in a letter to Acting Director Rowe, writing in part, quote, "The whistleblower claims that if personnel from the counter-surveillance division had been present at the rally, the gunman would have been handcuffed in the parking lot after being spotted with a rangefinder." The senator's letter comes after Hawley and other lawmakers grilled Rowe during his congressional testimony earlier this week, during which we learned about security failures. Rowe testified urgent warnings about the gunman were siloed in local and state radio channels. And he said some of the agency's equipment could have detected the gunman's drones, but the equipment didn't work.
It is something that I feel as though we could have perhaps found him. We could have maybe stopped him. Maybe on that particular day, he would have decided this isn't the day to do it because law enforcement just found me flying my drone.
Senator Hawley also says the whistleblower claims a culture of retaliation within the Secret Service for those who've spoken up about security concerns pertaining to former President Donald Trump's events. We reached out to the Secret Service, and the agency told us it respects the senator's position of oversight, and it plans to respond via official channels. Kayleigh.
CB, thank you. Much appreciated. You know, Speaker McCarthy, great to have you here. I am really stunned the more we learn about this. And I think a good way to think about this is this. There were heroes on the ground that day. Yes. The president's detail, the people who dove on top of him, the people who did not know what was going on. They are a part of Secret Service. Well, at the top, there was failure. And we have Lucas Tomlinson, or rather David Spunt, who heard this from a Secret Service senior official. The three things that failed us in Butler were lack of communication, leadership issue, lack of personnel, leadership issue, lack of use of technology, leadership issue. So we need to figure out where the leadership meets the heroes on the ground and who needs to be fired at what level.
You're 100%, because even the way they've handled it for these last 3 weeks, it's the leadership who's failed. When she first brought back, before she resigned, how she handled the congressional hearing, and now, the Secret Service has to be right 100% of the time. It's like an air traffic controller. You cannot be wrong. And for those Secret Service members that I work with, they are always constant improvement. Now, from the very basic, you look at the situation, you would say you would have had security on that roof. So it failed before the rally even started. Then the next failure, as we top off, you had indications ahead of time. You ran into this individual. Who would ever allow a rally to go forward if you found somebody that had a distance finder trying to find how far to go? You know this. You've been in these situations like I have. You would have stopped it. So there's so much. And then the lack of communication, that the wire to be able to communicate with the local police. Look, in my security, When we land somewhere, we hand a radio to the local police who are with us, so everybody's in the same communication. So when they spotted somebody, it would have been taken care of beforehand. And you never would have put the president up on that stage.
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on, Emily. The fact that a rangefinder, they knew this was on the ground. Who brings a rangefinder to a rally? Yes, they're ordinary. Yes, people have them in golf. You don't go golfing at a Trump rally. You bring a rangefinder if you want to commit wrongdoing. And, you know, as you think about this, these questions that the speaker poses, well, the way we get answers are press conferences. And we're 20 days out. We should have had 20 press conferences. We're getting number 1 today.
Optics matter, and the failure of that former director to even have a press conference and talk to the public right away is absolutely abysmal. Look, as a taxpayer, I am exhausted by the knowledge that this toxic culture under failed leadership of the Secret Service has been happening for years. We know about the investigation that Congress conducted. We know about the committees that have looked into this. We know about the repeated failures, marketing nightmares, PR disasters, behavioral freakouts, all of that under a failed leadership with that toxic culture for years. And the whole point is that I need to understand how is it going to change right now? Because right now there are a lot of good, amazing people under protection, and there are heroes willing to sacrifice their lives at a moment's notice for the people that they are protecting. So at the end of the line, or at the end of the day, look, as that taxpayer, tell me right now, is it more resources? Is it more training? It's clearly defunct leadership, but tell me right now what it is, because I'm sick and tired of trying to find out. I think we all know the answers, so let's get it fixed now.
You know, the New York Times, Marie, had one sentence that I think summed up everything we have learned. And this is the one sentence. The result was that a 20-year-old gunman had a technological advantage over a $3 billion with a B federal agency.
That New York Times story talked about how the Secret Service did not have the best technology. It wasn't working. They haven't invested in it. That is a stunning statement you just read, Kayleigh. And to Emily's point, this is not just one bad Secret Service director. This has been going on for a very long time. We remember when in the administration I served in, we had some really serious challenges with the Secret Service. This is an agency in deep need of reform. And you're exactly right. Is it more money? Is it more training? Is it more technology? Is it all of the above? Because firing this one director isn't going to fix it. I think a lot of other people will also be fired at the end of these investigations, and I think all of us probably think that's the right thing to do after we know exactly who is at failure here. But there are systemic problems. Thank God the worst didn't happen that day and other problems haven't happened, because with this level of failure, I'm shocked it hasn't. So they need to fix it now. And if Congress needs to give more money, let's give them more money.
And it did for the Comparatory family. The
Exactly,
worst did
that's
happen
right.
for that.
Worst did happen, yeah. And, you know, I want to pull up this video, Tammy. And our viewers, some of you may have seen it, but this is from the vantage point of a victim. And you can see here an individual running along the roof. And you see that individual, look at him there. This is from the 1 minute mark, Tammy, to about the 2 minute and 50-minute mark. The question being, how did no one see this?
And you'll notice in that shot that that camera moves up because of the motion. So it was visible. Clearly, for at least an hour before, other rally goers saw him. So we know this story. The problem here is because of the lack of communication, the Secret Service, not talking to us, conspiracy theories begin, and you begin to wonder, well, wait a minute. Is it just this perfect storm of failures? And why at this rally? Are they happening at other places? Was it happening with the First Lady on the same day? People begin to ask, but with Trump and with what we saw, of course, and look, I'm a romantic, I'm an American, I don't think this way, but the idea that the head of the FBI was involved with the Russia hoax, personally giving things to like his professor friend to leak about the president, like what don't you have something else to do? So Americans naturally are thinking, well, wait a minute now, they're not talking to us, they're blowhards in the congressional hearings. What can change right now? Because we don't want anything to happen to Kamala Harris. This is being broadcast internationally. We knew ahead of time that Iran was interested in harming Trump. So they knew that was occurring as well. And yet, all of these things broke down. And so we've got to get answers so we don't have a runaway narrative that this was on purpose. And also, as to your point, to fix it now, because this is the height of a season where Harris is going to be having rallies next week, where everyone on the ground and then their answer was telling Trump, don't have outdoor rallies, signaling they're not going to fix it, that they can't handle outdoor rallies.
Yeah.
So this is my concern. I am moving into, until we get answers, if this continues, how can we accept this as just a perfect storm that makes this happen? And that's a horrible shame, and it frightens me.
If you look at that video,
It's horrible.
yeah, but you're looking at a roof, and you look how close it is.
Yes.
We don't have to overthink it.
No.
Nobody should have been on that roof except law enforcement.
Right.
They should have had law enforcement there, and that's basic. So it really starts with leadership. The first thing that should have happened to anybody in the Secret Service when they come to the top, if a president has their shot, you resign. Leaders eat last, and that's a sign. If you talk to rank and files, Secret Service, they would say they would in that place. They did exactly what they should do that was directly around the president. It's the work beforehand. And why hasn't someone come out from the beginning and said, we failed, we're not going to let this happen again, and we can never be
Well,
wrong?
Speaker McCarthy, I do want to ask you, though, this 13-member task force, do you think they can get everyone in one room? Because the problem is local law enforcement pointing at Secret Service and Secret Service pointing back. Can they get everyone in one room, even if it's a subpoena?
Yeah, but the thing you need to do is don't make it for show. And I want to give Speaker Johnson a lot of credit for this, because I think the way he put it together, and he put the right people on there. Mike Kelly, who was actually there. I talked to him right after the shooting. Get the investigation, bring the people in and talk to them without the cameras first. Get the knowledge before you bring the head people in, so you have all the knowledge. So when you ask the question, if they're not answering it right, you ask the second question. You get to the bottom of it.
That will get to the bottom of it. So I'm hopeful. We will see what happens.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.